expressive, like a wave or hands of gratitude. As usual, now we have several announcements for all gathering attenders. Did you know that there's a gathering store? I didn't until today. Well, I did, but I hadn't visited yet. And you may not know that there is a 531 sale. The 531 sale is books today on a particular table were $5. Tomorrow they'll be $3. And the next day they'll be $1. Now, this is just on one table. This isn't every table out there. So go take a look at the Gathering Store in Founders Hall.
Remember, if you're not feeling well, please call the COVID number you'll find on the app and on the map. A volunteer will bring you a test.
Tomorrow at lunchtime, the high schoolers and staff will politely cut ahead in the lunch line so they can make their out trip on time. Please let them do so with grace and patience.
At the opening evening program, we clerks offered 2 queries for the week. Of course, in addition to the daily ones that our worship committee came up with and that are in the daily bulletin. And now that we're at midweek, we ask you to consider them again. How will I minimize harm in our 2024 gathering community? What does rooted in story mean to you?
Tonight's Q&A will be handled in a different way than the last 2 nights. You were each offered a note card and pencil upon entering the room tonight. As questions come to you during Bianca's talk, write them on a card, only 1 per card, please. After she finishes her talk and we return to the silence, please hand your cards towards the center aisle. The ushers will come from the back of the room to the front collecting the cards. The questions used during the discussion will be among those asked. However, there will not be time to answer them all.
And parents, please remember to pick your children up from the junior gathering evening program by 8:45. We certainly understand that you need to get up and leave a little bit earlier in order to do that. Thank you. So now we welcome Terry Nance to the mic to introduce tonight's speaker, Bianca van Heydoorn. Oh, sorry. Excuse me, I forgot. Have a seat, please. Sorry. My mistake. Actually, we invite to the mic Faith, who's going to spend a little time sharing with you tonight about giving to FGC.
This will be brief. This is an incredible joy to be here with all of you, friends. My name is Faith Josephs. I can put to the side. I am the Associate Secretary for Development with FGC, and this is Ann Pomeroy. She is the clerk of our Development Committee. Thank you so much for being here and for being a part of FGC's story, whether you are here in person or whether you are participating online.
Welcome. Spiritual service is a joy. These are spiritually, emotionally, politically challenging times in which we are creating the stories that will be told. Relationships matter, and they sustain us through life's many challenges. This week, I've experienced the deep joy of being in relationship in person with many friends. This is a gathering gift.
FGC is committed to transformation. This is evident in our programs, from the Ministry on Racism to Spiritual Deepening, and our other ministries as well.
All of our individual stories are a part of FGC's story. We invite you to deepen your involvement with FGC, either through contributions of time, money, or spiritual gifts. We invite you to seek us out and have conversations about this.
Please consider supporting FGC to help breathe spirit into our collective lives and the world. This gathering and all FGC ministries are only possible thanks to your support. If you are able, consider making a donation to FGC. There are many easy, quick ways to give. There is a QR code on the screen right now. There is an alert in the app, an announcement if you are using the app that links to our donate page. You can visit the fgcquaker.org website. There is a table at the entrance, near the entrance of the plenary, with information about FGC and giving. We are so grateful for your support and your participation. Thank you, friends.
Thank you very much.
Now it's my turn. Good evening. My name is Terry Nance, and I am a member of the Evening Programs Committee, and it is my honor to introduce this evening's speaker. But let me begin this brief introduction with a question. What do you get when you combine purpose, persistence, and passion? A job well done? An inspirational leader? A transformational change agent capable of altering lives and systems? Yes, and I think what you get is Bianca van Heydoorn, the executive director at the Youth Sentencing and Reentry Project. I will be calling that YSRP for short. YSRP is a program that works to keep children out of adult jails and prisons and to bring home people who were sentenced as children to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Think about that for a second. As executive director, Ms. Van Heydoorn provides strategic leadership and guidance to YSRP's 4 departments: case advocacy, development and communications, finance and operations, and policy. With an undergraduate degree in correctional sociology from the City University of New York and a graduate degree in criminal justice from John Jay College, our speaker has had a decorated career working to support people who have experienced incarceration, and she has done this for more than 2 decades. She doesn't look old enough, but that's what it said online, so it's got to be true. For 2 decades. Connected to such programs as Girls Educational and Mentoring Services, GEMS, the Center for Employment Opportunities, CEO, and the Vera Institute of Justice, she has deep roots and expertise in reentry work. Additionally, Bianca worked to increase access to college for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated students as the director of the educational initiatives at the Prisoner Reentry Institute, PRI, at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. About 5 years ago, Bianca moved to Philadelphia to tackle housing and food insecurity at Temple's Hope Center for college, community, and justice. And just prior to joining YRSP, our speaker served as the founding senior director of the Office of Reentry Partnerships in the managing director's office in the city of Philadelphia, where she worked to reimagine the city's approach to reentry. Now, there's even an interesting story about Executive Director Van Heydoorn's coming to YSRP. I found this really interesting online. When Bianca accepted the interim executive director at YSRP in February of 2022, she said expressly, she absolutely did not want to become the permanent executive director of YSRP. After two decades of reentry experience, she was tired and recovering from a traumatic illness. She was looking for a place of healing and rejuvenation and did not want to get drawn in once again to the exhausting work of justice reform. But you know, sometimes when you get talented and gifted people, things happen. She discovered that YSRP was an organization that was truly client-centered, where values actually drove decisions, where both lives and systems were being challenged and changed. And what started as maybe not, maybe so, our speaker found herself applying for the position she was once certain she never wanted. I'm sure we'll hear more about that story later. Like so many young people, so many of the young people her organization serves, Bianca van Heydoorn's journey began in a loving, close-knit family that had too many barriers and too few resources. This evening, our speaker will present the value of multiple stories, highlighting the importance of a dynamic view of ourselves and others as a guard against a single narrative. In sum, Bianca van Heydoorn is someone who works to be a servant leader, a spiritual seeker, and a model for anyone who will listen to the truth that no child deserves to be thrown away. Allow me to close with the words of YRSP's co-founder, Laura Fine. In Bianca, YSRP has found an exceptionally capable, insightful, strategic, and dynamic new leader. But more importantly, in Bianca, YSRP has found an exceptional embodiment of each of our organization's core values. And let me add, FGC has found an incredible speaker for this evening's program. Let me welcome the Youth Sentencing and Reentry Project's Executive Director, Bianca van Heydoorn.
Good evening. Mm. Good evening, everyone. It's what a pleasure to be here. Gratitude to you, Terry. Thank you so much. I don't think I've had a more beautiful introduction in my over 2-decade career. So thank you for that. Oof. I am going to, I might need to rejoin the Zoom. And I might need some help from Jen to do that. So while Jen comes up here, how did all of this happen? Please bear with us for 1 second. I don't know. So I'm actually gonna just get started while Jen sets me up. I'd like to start with a little crowd participation. Raise your hand if, like me, you find yourself telling the same stories about yourself over and over and over again, right? If, for example, when the conversation is about K through 12 education, I am very excited to tell people, brilliant. When the conversation goes to K through 12 education, I cannot wait to tell people that between the summer between second and third grade, I taught myself all the major bones of the body. When it comes to clever and innovative childhood antics, I really like telling the story about my third grade science project, where I made an invention that was a baby doll that didn't pee right away. When the conversation goes to difficult and challenging parenting, I talk about how sometimes and a lot of nights I had to put my mom in the bed instead of her putting me in the bed. When it comes to stories about good parenting, I can't wait to tell people that my mother let me wear whatever I wanted to wear because she knew that I like to express myself and she didn't want to hamper me in that way, despite what my Southern Baptist grandmother thought about what a respectable young woman should look like. When it comes to good parenting, I can't wait to tell people that my mother, who let me wear whatever I wanted to wear, saw a young child with this kind of energy and said, we've got to find you a theater program because I need you out my house from 11 to 3 on Saturday, right? When the story comes to friendships, I tell a story that has something to do with crown fried chicken and the gestational period of an elephant. Find me after if you want to hear the full story. And I say all of that to say, when people ask me how I got into the work that I do today, and what my connections are to the work I do today, sometimes I share with people that at 22 years old, I walked onto Rikers Island to do job placement work with people who were coming home, and how very quickly I was acclimated to Rikers Island because it actually looked like my junior high school. And it had some of the same rules. I didn't have to be told when I walked into Rikers Island what side of the hallway to walk on. I didn't have to be told how to move through that space. I didn't have to be educated about what the social norms were in that space, because I had been trained since a young child in educational settings to move through buildings similarly, right? And they smelled the same and they looked the same, and the floors were designed by the same person, I imagine, right? We all have these snippets of story. And oftentimes I'm curious how you would reflect on this, but as I've reflected on it, I found that oftentimes I match the story to the situation. So when we are talking about things that light me on fire, I might talk about New York City penal code. Or I might talk about the complete works of Shakespeare that I was gifted on for Christmas in 1997, right? I might talk about how excited I was to be a Black girl playing Kate in Taming of the Shrew when I fell in love with classical theater in my junior year of high school. What I'd love to talk to you guys about today, though, is how each of those stories are true. And if we only rely on one of them, we miss so much. When we base our opinions, our thoughts, our value of other human beings on a single story that they tell us or that we perceive in one way or another, we miss the complexity. We miss the nuance. We miss the fun, and we miss the danger. And so what I hope to reflect in sharing pieces of my own story and the incredible work that happens at the Youth Sentencing and Reentry Project is to encourage everyone here and everyone out there, wherever the cameras are, to think about the ways in which the myriad stories that make up the humans that occupy this skin that we're in right now, the ways in which those myriad stories make us and make us make meaning, and the ways in which those stories and the complexities within them can connect us to others, that can help us understand others, that can help us move past through barriers to greater understanding, and dare I say, healing. That has been my story. And I have found that in embracing, acknowledging, owning, and celebrating all of the things that made me who I am today, I am a better human. I am healing little Bianca, the parts of little Bianca that felt unheard, the parts of little Bianca that felt unseen, the parts of little Bianca that were actually harmed, and also healing the parts of Bianca that harmed others, and contending with the parts of Bianca that are still harmful to others. I think I'm set up on the Zoom now, and I am sharing my screen, which is great. So I'd like to start, like, where do I begin? I threw a bunch of pictures up here, all of me, because why not? But also, if I sliced, if I could talk up here for a whole hour about any one of these slices of my life. If I started with the picture of little Bianca sitting next to Miss Molly, that's the very attractive white woman whose face is not blurred out. I would say that my television debut was when I was in kindergarten on the television show Romper Room. That my entire kindergarten class watched me on. And how I got to Romper Room was because every single morning, my mother would get me dressed before school and sit me in front of the television to watch Romper Room while she got dressed. And as she came down the stairs in the morning to usher me off to that school that looked a whole lot like Rikers Island, I would say, Mom, Romper Room and Friends, WWOR-TV, Secaucus, New Jersey, 000, blah, 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 blah. Every morning. And that same mother who saw me in the midst of all her pain and all of her struggle said, I guess I got to find out how to get this child on this show. And she found a way. And I will say, yes, I'm bragging right now, that typically kindergartners that made it on Romper Room were there for one day and you got to sit next to Miss Molly and then time for the next kid. Well, remember that energy I showed you in the beginning? That energy got me an invitation to film for the whole week. And when I look back on that in retrospect, sometimes I'll give you the lesson in the story and sometimes not, so don't get used to it. In this case, when I looked back on it, it was one of those moments that I would set my heart on something and I would not stop until I got it. And that's something that I have learned is germane to who I am. If I went to the story, if I went to the picture directly to the left of it on my screen, there's a picture of me in a white shirt, green pants, looking like I'm too angry to smile. Looking like I want to smile, but I know my environment won't let me. And that young woman was gang affiliated. That young woman created incredible harm in her community that she still is learning about and reckoning with 30 years later. That young woman experienced a lot of pain, a lot of abuse, a lot of early adulthood. That young woman strove to have agents over her own life. That young woman survived chaos in her home, in her community, and interpersonally. I'm the first one in my immediate family to graduate from college. I'm not the first one to attend. but I'm the first one to earn a degree. The picture right next to that is the very first graduation I got to go to since 5th grade. I was sent to the great state of Pennsylvania from New York when I was in the 8th grade to live with my father, who had just gotten sober, because my mother said, if you get in one more fight, I am sending you to live with your father. And I went to school the next day, face covered in Vaseline, razor blade tucked in my cheek, ready to move to Pennsylvania. I did not graduate from junior high school. I came back to New York to attend high school. And Fiorello H. LaGuardia High School for Music and Art and Performing Arts was my dream. I was a kid in the 80s and I was watching the TV show Fame. And that school was like, when I found out it was a real place, sign me up immediately. That was my dream. When I returned to New York, because my father had relapsed and that home became unsafe. And in the meantime, my parents in New York, my mother and my stepfather, had gotten sober. And in my 13-year-old mind, that was me. I was the common denominator. I showed up somewhere and somebody got high. I left somewhere and somebody got sober. I auditioned for LaGuardia High School the day before school started. My options were get a phone call that night from the school saying, you're in, show up at Manhattan tomorrow morning at 8:15, or you're out. And I had to show up at my neighborhood high school where all of the people I had either engaged in violence with or against would be waiting for me. And just like Romper Room, I was walking through the doors at 8:15 in the morning at Fiorello H. LaGuardia High School of Music and Art and Performing Arts. And that is a miracle. And that was one of the things that helped move me to the place that I'm in now, the space that I'm in now, the friends I have now. It was a beautiful experience. I will not go through all of these pictures. That is a picture of me in my junior year of high school, getting ready to play Kate in Taming of the Shrew. The dress that I am wearing was loaned to me from the very prestigious collection of the New York Public Library for Performing Arts in Lincoln Center, where the Philharmonic plays, where the ballet is, right? And where I happen to have my first job. And I bring this up for two reasons. I was in the school that I had dreamed about being in. I was exposed to so many different worlds and cultures that I had never seen before, I would not have had an arm's length to reach out to from South Jamaica, Queens in New York. And it was a friend who had a job at that library who knew I wanted to get a job because I was tired of the illegal things that I was doing and a little bit too afraid. Now I had something to lose. And now I was old enough to get my working papers. And that friend helped me get that job. And those librarians saw something in my magical Black self and said, "You're doing Taming of the Shrew? You must come to the collection and pick out a dress." What an amazing thing. That is what resourced, amazing, caring adults looked like in my life. Another reason I bring this picture up is because sometimes we think, and particularly when we're talking about Black, brown, and broke folks, we think that it's the one thing, the one exceptional experience that then sets the course on a straight line. And I want this picture to demonstrate that that's not how it works all the time. Yes, I was in the school of my dreams. Yes, I had a job that I could report to the IRS about, right? Yes, I had a beautiful, gorgeous period dress, unlike my classmates who had to cobble something together, right? And I had one foot in the hood, in some violence, in gang affiliation, and one foot steeped in Shakespeare. And I was pregnant. And already disappointing the heck out of and proving many of those adults who said I would not make it to 21 alive. And if I made it to 21 alive, I wouldn't make it to 21 without being a parent. I had already failed on those fronts. But there were just enough strategically placed, resourced grown-ups in my life that treated me like a human being with thoughts and preferences and dreams and goals, and engaged in conversation with me as if I had a brain. There were just enough strategically placed grown-ups in my life to help love me into adulthood in a way that would keep me safe. I cannot say the same for many of my friends. As a matter of fact, one of my friends, whose name I will call to now, but will not necessarily call other names, a friend of mine, Shelby, had just, when this picture was taken, was about a year into a 15 to 18 year sentence for murder. And it is that friendship, among others, that really helped me understand where I could use my gifts and what my assignment was. The big message here is access and opportunity. I heard a colleague about a month ago talk about his experience and say that the gang that he was in was the most advanced social network he could reach. And that resonated with me so deeply. Because in this first picture, in 1993, I was taking full advantage of the social networks that I could reach. I'm a Capricorn, I have high standards. So they were advanced social networks. They just happen to be not very helpful for my safety. I might come back here, but something's telling me to move on. So in 1996, I was 16 years old. Shelby was 17 and was sent half years. And over the course of those years, we would stay in constant communication through letters. I would go visit. At one point, I was going up kind of every other month just to like kick it and be with my family. And then something shifted where both of us kind of at the same time started getting really curious and really mad about having to leave each other behind at visits, about what the system does to human beings. And he got busy on the inside. I got busy on the outside. And we came to really challenge the carceral system, the carceral system's intention to disappear him and to rob me of the contributions he had to make. And we both said no. It would be a really long time before we got to choose where we sat next to each other when we were in the same room. I would be 32 and he would be 34. I lived several lifetimes in those 17, 18 years. Several. I got to go to college. I got to fall in love. I got to fall out of love. I got to go to grad school. I got to have nieces and nephews and travel the world. I got to get invited to the White House and talk about the importance of access to higher education for people who were in prison. I got to leave the South Bronx at 6 o'clock in the morning and walk into the White House and return to the South Bronx. I got to have nieces and nephews and godchildren. I got to lose my first godchild to a fire. I got to see my parents get sober, and I got to fall into my own addiction that would last years and years and years. And I am grateful that by the time Shelby came home, I was sober. I was working to provide access to higher education for people who were incarcerated. And there was a community for him to come home to, and open arms for him to come home to. And it's a weird sensation to be a whole grown adult and not be able to choose how close I want to sit to my loved one. To not be able to choose whether I sit beside him, across from him, diagonal, how long our hugs have to be, and even more unthinkable is that 17 to 18 and a half years of his maturation were spent in the most peculiar place for a child to grow up, an American prison. That the values and the lessons and the ways of being in the world that ushered him into adulthood occurred in a place that we collectively decided it was okay to send children. And that boggles my mind, on top of breaking my heart. I crushed it in college. I crushed it. And here's why. One, I had choice. I had choice about where to go. I had choice about what time my classes were. I had choice about which classes to take and what I was curious about. I had agency in ways that I didn't have agency before, not just in my educational pursuits, but in very few places in my life. I loved it. The geek in me was like, yes, please, more. I also succeeded because my peer group, the peer group that I was running with at the time, were going to college and had parents. Some of them had parents who had also been to college. And so I got to benefit from Rachel Shapiro's mom on dial-up internet helping me fill out the FAFSA, because who else could help me do it? Helping me fill out all of the things that didn't make sense to me and might as well have been written in an ancient Slavic language. I was dating someone at the time who was also really smart and really motivated, and we got into a little contest. And whoever got the highest GPA at the end of the semester had to take the other one out to dinner, and I wasn't trying to lose. My stepfather, who by this time now is a few more years sober, had also decided to go back to school. And so I saw inspiration and the possibility of transformation. And I went to a commuter school. So I thought that the people there were serious, you know, not that campus fun crowd. But I crushed it. I graduated with my bachelor's degree, magna cum laude, and designed my own degree because I knew what I wanted to study. I knew from my experience and my friendship with Shelby that there was an assumption that you didn't have humanity if you were somebody who was convicted of a crime. That not only was it the important and right thing to do to disappear you behind a wall, but we also get to forget about you because there's no way any sophisticated societies or anything that resembles community could be going on in a place like that. But I knew different, not just from Shelby, but from my father, from my uncle, from all of the friends that I had that had been incarcerated. I knew that there were complex communities being built that allowed some people to survive the cages that we think it's okay to put human beings into. And I was deeply curious about understanding how those communities got built, sustained, and how much they mirrored community on the outside. So I designed this degree to get at those questions. There's a lot of work and a lot of life that went on between that time and now, and my work now at YSRP. But I want to make a couple of connections here. If I am stuck on the story of a famous and prestigious high school or a donated one-of-a-kind Bridgerton level dress, I miss the confused pregnant teenager in pain. And if I stay with 17 and pregnant and gang affiliated, I miss the joy of that 17-year-old receiving the complete works of William Shakespeare for Christmas and losing her ever-loving mind. And when I hold them together, wow, what beauty. What a way to shake up the things that I get taught about people who love William Shakespeare and about people who end up 17 and pregnant. What nuance, what complexity, what expanded understanding that exponentially grows the people I could have a connection to and with, and the people who could be connected to me, and the communities that I could be a part of. When I take them together, when I remember that the young woman who said romper room, the child that said romper room and friends, WWOR TV, Secaucus, New Jersey, blah, 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 is the same kid that would curse out her global studies teacher for teaching wrong and racist things, that would then leave the classroom and beat the crap out of some child that didn't deserve it, right? That would go home and read penal code. All of those things existed in the same person and in the same life. And when I hold them together, it gets me closer to the truth. It gets me closer to the truth. I'm going to skip page 3 of YSRP's brochure. You can read our mission statement and our vision and our history on our website. What YSRP is to me, and I hope out in the world, is an organization that understands that young people are fundamentally different than adults in all kinds of ways. And that when we treat children like they are adults, particularly when it comes to the criminal legal system, we are compounding trauma. We are communicating explicitly and implicitly that you, young person, deserve to be thrown away. That you deserve to be saddled with 44,000 collateral consequences of a criminal conviction for the rest of your life. We reject that because we recognize that children are different. You know, all the brain science, all the still developing prefrontal cortex, all that. What I'm suggesting here today is we don't even have to go there if we take a look at our own stories, if we take a look at our own experiences, if we are willing to go deep and beyond the story we tell over and over and over again about ourselves. And maybe start to think about the times and the places where somebody needed to love us into adulthood. It may not be as dramatic. It probably isn't as dramatic as the things I've gone through or the things our client partners have gone through. But the remedy is the same. The remedy is love, is consistent guidance, is resources and access and opportunity. YSRP works with young people who are charged as adults in Philadelphia, Montgomery, and Delaware counties. Our goal is to get the young person's case moved from adult court into juvenile court, where juvenile court was founded on the premise that young people are fundamentally different than adults, and those things should be taken into consideration. The juvenile justice system is not perfect. It is far from perfect. And many of you, I'm sure, have read reports about abuses that happen in those places where we send children, which is why one of the things we advocate is let the deprivation of liberty be the last resort. There are ways for us to be more creative than we're being right now that will still produce healing and safety. We also work with people who, when they were children, as Terry said in the introduction, were sentenced to life without parole. Each and every client partner that we work with in an individual way. One of the things I love about YSRP is that we are not a robotic here's our program model, and you come in and copy and paste, and everybody does the same thing because we know what's best for your life. You're the screw up. We're the expert. We are finding out from people what they need, and we are helping them navigate and meet their needs. That is our job. And this is some of us. The picture, the black and white picture is our staff. I put the other picture here because we have a partnership with the Philadelphia 76ers, and which is huge. And we got tickets this year to one of the playoff games that the Sixers were in. And I attended this game with some of our client partners, and we had really good seats this time. Really good seats. And I saw the familiar look of joy and a first-time experience on the face of our client partners about not only about being at the game. For some of them, it was the first time at a sports event, but for others, it was like, I can see the sweat on Tyrese Maxey's face. Like, that joy was incredible to me. And that liberating smile. This work is important in Philadelphia specifically because Philly has sentenced the most people on the planet to life without, most children on the planet to life without the possibility of parole. Because if you are Black or brown and broke in Philadelphia and young, you've astronomically higher chances of being arrested, convicted, and incarcerated than you do if you are white. Of the 2,000 people you can see on this slide who were sentenced to life without parole in the country, Pennsylvania and Philly win in ways that I don't want to call us winners. And our job at YSRP is to disrupt that, is to interrupt that, is to stand in between the young person and the system and say, there's a whole person here. And so a lot of our work involves partnering with the young person, with their attorney, with their teacher, with their loved ones, and deep interviews. We pull hospital records, school records, anything that we can to find out as much information as we can from the moment that young person was born until the moment that young person shows up in front of a judge. To say, if you understand what is surrounding that young person, then you might be able to understand the decisions they made with the access and the opportunities they had, and taking advantage of the most advanced social network they could reach. And with that understanding, we ask the court to do something that would be of service to a young person, which is not put them in a place where they would be in effective solitary confinement because they need to live in a cage next to adults. I'll end by saying this work also feels, nope, before I end, I will say YSRP is what it is because of the people who work there, because of the vision of the founders of the organization, because of the client partners who are honest with us about what's going on in their lives, because we take that information and we turn it into our policy platform, because we take that information and use it to revamp the way that we do direct service, because we deeply learn from our experiences in court and our relationships with lawyers, so we can develop trainings for other lawyers in other parts of the state to do this work better, to provide better representation for young people who are caught between the adult and the juvenile system. It is because we see whole people who deserve to be and stay whole people. And we want to stick our foot in the door that is trying to close on their future. And I personally see it as a beautiful healing experience that I get to work out in real time, in community, where all of my stories are useful and beneficial and illustrative of what to do and what not to do sometimes. And that I don't have to hide any part of who I am or where I've been or what I've learned. Indeed, all of the stories are valuable contributions because I see myself in the young people that we serve, and I want them to see themselves in me. Because somebody did that for me. Many somebodies did that for me. It is not enough, in my view, for young people to be motivated by the haters, to be motivated by the ops. That's not enough. Because at some point, anger can only propel you so far. Love is the thing that works. Not everybody at YSRP would say we do love, but their behavior shows it. I'm very eager to get to questions, and I think I spoke a little longer than I intended to. There are a number of ways that you can be involved. Check out our website. Follow us on all the social medias if you do that. And now I will ask Terry to join me between two ferns to take some of your questions.
The winning lottery number is. Yes, that's. Terry, why don't you come on up? And you might need to explain what the between two ferns thing is for some people. Do you want to pull up two chairs? Yeah, let's do it. And
Friends, will you hold us while we just do this preparatory work, please? Thank you.
Hello, hello. Was that amazing? I have to admit that when I first met Bianca, who came in a door I didn't expect, I honestly was looking around going, where's Bianca? I, because after reading your impressive biography and researching you for a couple of days, you didn't look, even though I saw your picture, you didn't look like what I thought. I had a story written for you. And I think one of the things that we heard even from the beginning is that I think what you did is you challenged us to see beyond what we thought we knew. And in that came to incredible insight. And I think that this is a good first question to start with. What is an example of something you know to say that gives a youthful offender hope?
Hello? Hello? There we go.
Hello.
Oh, it is. Okay.
You're already friendly with
That one. I think I don't think there's one thing to say. I would say the universal, something that I have found to be universally helpful is authentically listening and asking probing questions. You know, that thing that young people do where they go, why? 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 That works in reverse. I think it's listening and genuinely being curious. That work is way more effective than anything that could be said.
Can I just ask a follow-up? One of the things that gave me pause as I read the question is that the question writer identified the person as a youthful offender. How do you refer to your clients?
Thank you for that question. I almost started my response by saying, I've never met a youthful offender. I don't know anybody named youthful offender.
Youthful last name
And I
offender.
get, right. I get the shorthand and I understand the shorthand. And at YSRP, we're very clear about language. And one of the things I think you heard me over the course of my talking saying client partner, client partner, client partner. We intentionally use that language because they are both a client of ours, which is like legal language, and a partner in their own life, like in the work that we're going to do together. So outside of a name, I would say client partner, and a name would be even better.
And in that way, you're giving someone hope.
That one.
This is a great question. What factors contribute to PA, to Pennsylvania having 25% of the US youth with lifelong convictions without possibility of parole?
I don't know that we have enough time to get into all of the things that have contributed to why Pennsylvania specifically. And I would say many of the same things that are true about why we're in this position in the first place as a nation, right? It's the race making that was enslavement in this country and the institution of slavery that created race in this the way we think of race in this country. The fact that the first municipal police force was around to enforce the Fugitive Slave Act, right? And all of the things, all of the things. And you know, in the early 90s through the like 2010s, we were really, really into this experiment of like everything that happens, we use incarceration for. And all things kind of in between. I think we are in the process of understanding and reckoning with some of those histories. But in a lot of ways, you know, we mirror the country, and in a lot of ways we're out ahead of the country. And, you know, I think that means that we can be ahead of the country in what we do to repair, because we can set the example as a state.
And one of the things I want to lift up is that very close connection. I love what you said, the race making of enslavement in this country, and the fact that slave patrols were the first policing in this country. And that becomes something that many people don't want. We don't know about that. And I remember when I heard it for the first time, even though I wanted to believe, I said, it can't be true. And yet, when we think about that, then can we really be surprised at what we see?
Right. There is no notion of policing that exists in this country that doesn't have its roots in your Black body is not where it is supposed to be. And my job is to put your Black body where it belongs. And I think when we understand that part of its history, and we understand, you know, if there's something like social epigenetics, right?
Yes.
That is a part of what comes into every other iteration of that institution.
So many things I want to talk about, but we have to get to these questions, except allow me just one more. When you said that the schools modeled Rikers Island, anybody else here associated with schools? Did you feel that was something that I felt to my core? It's almost like we were training these young people to get ready for prison. Not an accident, right? And we've got some initials here. How is YSRP the same or different from YASP, Youth, Art, and Self-Empowerment Project? Do y'all ever work or partner together?
Yes. Thank you for that question. Raise your hand if you wrote the one. Yay. Hey, friends. YASP and YSRP are really, really good friends. We do a lot of work together. We were previously on the Care Not Control Coalition together. The work that we do a Know Your Rights thing at Riverside Correctional Facility that YASP is also connected to. So we're working with the same young people there. We like love, admire, respect YASP. They're our sister organization. We feel this way about them.
Well, this is actually another one of those kind of content questions. How do clients get to you?
Great question. A lot of our client partners come through either word of mouth from their friends that have worked with us, or through attorneys that know about us and have worked with us in the past, and they get a case that's a young person charged as an adult. We've even had sometimes judges look at cases and say to the defense attorney, you need to call YSRP on this case, right? So it's kind of a hodgepodge, and in good ways and in ways that make me happy and ways that make me sad. We don't have to recruit, right? So I'm happy that we don't have to recruit because the legal community knows about us, respects us, and seeks us out. Young people have had positive experiences with us and will tell their friends this is a helpful place. That's the part that makes me happy. The fact that there are so many young people who are going through this experience such that we don't have to search them out and dig under rocks for them makes me very sad, and lets me know that I'm not going to get to my dream of epic homesteading anytime soon.
I hear that. How can we change statutory mandatory sentencing and give judges and the justice systems alternatives to the status quo?
When we find that answer, I can go be an epic homesteader. I think some of the way that YSRP approaches that is like kind of through our policy agenda is really trying to build relationship with legislators, build coalition with our partners, and get people who have the lived experience in front of legislators to hear this is the impact that this law, that this piece of legislation had on me, or particularly effective with juvenile lifers. Until the Supreme Court decision came down, they were going to die in prison. And it is very powerful to be sitting across from someone who was supposed to die in prison and tell it to hear about what difference a change in the law would have made in their own lives, and giving legislators an opportunity to save the lives of others by shifting legislation, right? So some of that is through our policy work, and that is a slow sausage making process, right? And we didn't get here by one avenue. We're not going to get out of it by one avenue. So I think it takes legislation, it takes action in the street, it takes, coalition building, it takes each person coming home and healing and doing what they, need to do. And then it takes like grassroots community building in some instances, because not all of the solutions should live in government.
Say more.
If we know that the history of the police force, it will take time for the police to be able to engage in communities in ways that are not harmful to Black bodies. If we're building community, and there's a concept in criminology around kind of social controls, formal and informal social controls, right? The police are a formal social control, and the grandma, the Black captain, that's like, baby, that's an informal social control, right? And so to me, it's about the legislation to push the formal mechanisms, and about community building at the home and kind of neighborhood level to help create safety in places where it still feels a little bit precarious to rely on police to create community safety.
How, if at all, are you working with police? Both, you had some connections in the managing director's office. So are there any liaisons or any kinds of connections that you're doing in terms of systematically working with the Philadelphia police?
It's a great question. At this point, we are not. A lot of our energy is focused on obviously our direct service work and on the legislative work. But right now, our I was about to say target, but that sounds more intense than I mean it. Our priority, our goal right now is working on that training of prosecutors, judges,
Okay.
court actors
Mhm.
about what it looks like to do holistic representation in the court, right?
Okay.
And we want to really make sure that we're staying in a lane that's uniquely ours,
Mhm.
which is what does it look like to do that court-based work.
To follow up on that, it's actually a question I'm trying to make sense of it as I'm reading it. It says, what happens in family court building? And it says Steve Thompson, whole Quaker meeting is. Steve, help me. Oh, we're one block. Oh, CPMM is 1 block away. That's it.
Got it. So most of our work occurs in criminal court because
Okay.
our young people are not
Oh,
in family court.
okay.
Our goal is to
Get them to
get
family
them to
court.
family court, right?
Understood.
So much of our work is happening in adult criminal court. And there are folks working in family court to move family court to be better than what it is and all of that. And we love that work and need that work to happen because there are leaps and bounds to be improved on the family court side for sure.
I'm leaping through, even though there's I have like 5 questions I want to ask after that one, but what is the most challenging part of connecting youth with resources appropriate for them? If I could, while you're thinking of that, add to that question, first of all, what kinds of, you mentioned resources several times. What kinds of resources are we talking about? I know you're saying it's not a cookie cutter, but still, if you could generalize, what kind of resources, who needs them, and what do they do with them?
Hello? Oh, there I am. So I'll start with the kinds of resources and then I'll respond to what feels like the most challenging. It really does run the gamut. Generally, they're financial resources.
Okay.
They're and that's everything from support paying a cell phone bill or an electric bill or rent. We just launched a housing program because so many of our client partners are without housing, right? Or have like unstable housing.
Right.
And if you're on probation, you need a stable address. If you're on house arrest, you need a house to be house arrested in, right? If you just want to have a stable life, housing is like a huge, so we take a housing first approach. We are committed to paying a year of that young person's rent so that they can be stable and move forward. So it looks like those kinds of things. It looks like connections to educational opportunities, to mental health resources, to employment, to organizing opportunities in the, it really runs the gamut. And I think part of what is challenging about connecting young people to, and sometimes the resource is someone else that's a little older or a little bit ahead in the game, even if they're not older, so that they've got someone to.
Like a mentor, a peer mentor.
Exactly. And sometimes it's connecting folks to our intergenerational healing circles, which is a group of our client partners, both former juvenile lifers and young people that meet every other week and have a circle to talk about trauma, to talk about their experiences, to talk about how to navigate. And that is a space exclusively for them. And I would say what's challenging about the challenge isn't connecting the young person to resources. I think the challenge is twofold. One, that's just a function of youth, which is like consistency, right? Like show up, like kids flake out, like that's just
Kids.
developmentally
Yeah.
appropriate and what we could expect. But bigger than kind of the flaky nature of adolescence, is that we're connecting them to resources, and many times their environment remains the same. They still live in communities that are over policed. They are still likely to be stopped and illegally frisked on their way home. When they are stopped and frisked and they have a criminal record, they are more likely to be arrested because they have a criminal record, and more likely to be labeled a recidivist, and more likely to, right? In many of the young people's environments that many of the environments that our young people are growing up in, like the one that I grew up in, their proximity to people who are engaged in violence, even if they have desisted, is still very close. And so the resources are one thing,
Mhm.
and where those resources land, or where they have to exercise those resources, makes it a challenge.
I can't believe, but I'm getting the signal. It's almost time. So we have one last question, and I actually saw this question before, but I want to ask it now. What does the artist in you say is the next step in your life?
I'm gonna give the most honest answer. I can't believe I'm not gonna perform an answer to this question. The artist in me says, Bianca, it is time for you to get your backside in some improv classes so you can remember what joy feels like.
Yes, 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 yes. Absolutely. And I have to say, what a joy it has been to listen to Bianca this evening.
Friends, thank you. And deep gratitude to Dr. Terry Nance, who I did not introduce properly earlier, please forgive me, who is faculty and recently retired Vice President of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Villanova University, just up the street, now full-time grandmama. And member of Central Philadelphia Monthly Meeting, and to Bianca van Heydoorn, Executive Director of the Youth Sentencing and Reentry Project. Thank you so much for joining us. Good night, friends.